When a pack of hungry hyenas surrounded a defenseless baby elephant, the outcome seemed inevitable, another brutal reminder of nature's merciless laws. But what emerged from the shadows to intervene was so shocking that it left wildlife experts questioning everything they thought they knew about the animal kingdom. The rescue that followed broke every rule of survival and revealed a truth about compassion that will forever change how you see the wild. The crimson sun began its descent over the vast Kalahari Desert, painting the endless expanse of golden sand and scattered acacia trees in shades of amber and rust.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you.
This was the Tswalu Kalahari Reserve in South Africa, one of the largest private game reserves on the continent, where the harsh beauty of the desert met the drama of African wildlife in their most raw and unforgiving form. Ancient baobab trees stood like silent sentinels against the darkening sky, their massive trunks bearing witness to centuries of survival in this unforgiving landscape. The air shimmered with residual heat from the scorching day, carrying the dry scent of red earth, thorny vegetation, and the distant musk of countless creatures preparing for the dangers of nightfall. This was a place where water was precious, shade was salvation, and every creature lived by the iron laws of survival. The Kalahari was unforgiving, a realm where the strong preyed upon the weak, where mercy was a luxury few could afford, and where death could come swift and merciless to those who showed even a moment of vulnerability. As twilight deepened, the desert began to stir with nocturnal life. The haunting calls of jackals echoed across the dunes, while the rustle of unseen creatures moving through the sparse bushveld created a symphony of wildness. Somewhere in the distance, the deep rumble of elephants communicating through infrasonic calls vibrated through the cooling sand. But beneath this ancient rhythm of predator and prey, something extraordinary was about to unfold. In this harsh landscape where compassion seemed impossible and survival demanded ruthless selfishness, nature was preparing to reveal one of its most profound secrets. The stage was set for an encounter that would shatter every assumption about the animal kingdom and prove that even in the most brutal environments, the capacity for unexpected heroism could emerge from the most unlikely sources. Dr. Nalani Theron had dedicated 12 years of her life to understanding the complex behavioral patterns of the Kalahari's most misunderstood predators. As one of South Africa's leading carnivore specialists, she had earned international recognition for her groundbreaking research on hyena social structures and their crucial role in maintaining ecosystem balance. Her sun-weathered face and calloused hands told the story of countless nights spent in dusty blinds, documenting the intricate family dynamics of creatures most people dismissed as mere scavengers. But Nalani knew better. She understood that hyenas were among Africa's most intelligent predators, with complex social hierarchies rivaling those of primates and communication systems that scientists were only beginning to decode. The local Tswana people called her Mosadi wa Difufolo, the woman of the animals, respecting her uncanny ability to predict predator movements and interpret the subtle signs that revealed the desert's hidden dramas. Her research camp, nestled between towering red dunes, had become a hub where cutting-edge science met ancient wisdom about the rhythms of the wild. Tonight, Nalani was tracking the Matamba clan, a particularly large hyena pack led by a formidable matriarch named Kessie. This clan had been exhibiting unusual behaviors lately, venturing into elephant territories during daylight hours and showing less fear of the massive herbivores than typical hyena wisdom dictated. Kessie herself was a remarkable specimen, scarred from countless territorial battles but possessing an intelligence that bordered on strategic genius. Nalani had watched her solve complex problems, coordinate elaborate hunting strategies, and display what could only be described as calculated decision-making rather than mere instinct. As Nalani adjusted her night vision equipment and settled into her observation post, she was focused on documenting what she believed might be evolutionary adaptations to increasing competition for resources. The drought had been particularly harsh this season, forcing desperate creatures into increasingly dangerous encounters. But nothing in her extensive training or years of field experience could have prepared her for what she was about to witness in the cooling desert night. The first sign of trouble came as a high-pitched trumpeting call that shattered the desert's evening tranquility. Nalani's head snapped toward the sound, her trained ear immediately recognizing the distress call of a young elephant. Through her night vision scope, she quickly located the source of the commotion near a small watering hole about 200 meters from her position. A baby elephant no more than 8 months old had become separated from its herd during their evening migration to water. The calf's tiny trunk waved frantically in the air as it searched for its family, its panicked calls echoing across the empty landscape. In the harsh mathematics of the Kalahari, a lone baby elephant was not just vulnerable, it was doomed. That's when Nalani spotted them. Moving like shadows across the red sand, the Matamba clan had detected the calf's distress and was systematically surrounding their unexpected opportunity. Casey led the approach, her powerful jaws and razor-sharp teeth glinting in the moonlight as she coordinated her pack with the precision of a military commander. Hyenas were opportunistic hunters, and while they rarely took down healthy adult elephants, a separated calf represented a feast that could feed the entire clan for days. The pack moved with calculated efficiency, cutting off potential escape routes while maintaining the perfect distance to avoid the calf's desperate charges. The baby elephant, sensing mortal danger, backed against a fallen acacia tree, its small tusks barely visible as it tried to appear threatening. But at barely 3 feet tall and weighing less than 300 pounds, it was no match for 15 hungry hyenas, each weighing nearly 150 pounds and armed with bone-crushing jaws capable of exerting 1,100 pounds of pressure per square inch. Nalani reached for her emergency flare gun, knowing that wildlife protocol sometimes allowed intervention to prevent unnecessary suffering. But as her finger hovered over the trigger, she hesitated. This was nature's raw reality, brutal but essential to the desert's delicate balance. Her interference could disrupt behavioral patterns she had spent years documenting. But as Nalani focused her scope on the unfolding drama, movement in the peripheral darkness caught her attention. Something massive was approaching from the opposite direction, something that made her blood run cold with disbelief. Through the infrared lens, she could make out the unmistakable silhouette of an adult bull elephant. But this wasn't the baby's mother or family member coming to the rescue. This was Temba, a solitary bull she had been tracking for months. At 45 years old and weighing nearly 7 tons, Temba was known throughout the reserve for his aggressive temperament and complete intolerance of other elephants. He was a rogue male who had been expelled from multiple herds for his violent behavior toward calves that weren't his own. Nalani had documented dozens of instances where Temba had actually attacked young elephants, viewing them as competition for resources or simply as annoyances to be driven away. Just 3 weeks earlier, she had watched him chase a different calf for over a mile, trumpeting with rage and making mock charges that could have easily killed the terrified youngster. The scientific literature was clear. Solitary bull elephants showed no paternal instincts toward unrelated calves and often displayed active hostility. Temba, in particular, had earned a reputation as one of the most antisocial elephants in the reserve. Park rangers had even discussed relocating him due to his aggressive encounters with elephant families. Yet here he was, moving deliberately toward a scene where hyenas were about to kill a helpless calf. Logic dictated that Temba would either ignore the situation entirely or, worse, potentially join in harassing the already doomed youngster. Bull elephants were known to be opportunistic when it came to asserting dominance over weaker members of their species. Nalani's scientific mind raced through possibilities, but none of them made sense. Why would the most antisocial elephant in the reserve approach a situation that offered him no benefit and considerable risk? 15 hyenas, while individually smaller than an elephant, could inflict serious damage when working as a coordinated pack. Something was happening that defied everything she understood about elephant psychology and social behavior. Nalani found herself paralyzed by an impossible ethical calculation as she watched Temba's steady approach toward the life-or-death confrontation. Her scientific training demanded strict non-interference, but every fiber of her humanity screamed at the injustice unfolding before her eyes. A defenseless baby was about to die, while the one creature capable of saving it had historically shown nothing but hostility toward its own kind. The hyenas had begun their final approach, their haunting whoops and cackles filling the night air as they sensed victory. Casey's pack moved with the coordinated precision of a military unit, each member knowing their role in the deadly choreography about to unfold. The baby elephant's trumpeting grew more desperate, its small body trembling with exhaustion and terror. Meanwhile, Temba continued his methodical advance, his massive form moving through the desert scrub with surprising stealth for such an enormous creature.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
But his intentions remained completely unclear. Would he simply watch the slaughter unfold with the cold indifference typical of his antisocial nature? Would he perhaps even participate, using the chaos to assert his dominance over the helpless calf? Nalani's finger remained poised over her emergency flare, knowing that one bright burst could scatter the hyenas and potentially save the baby elephant's life. But years of field research had taught her that human intervention often created more problems than it solved. Rescued animals frequently died anyway, deprived of crucial survival lessons. Predator populations could be disrupted by artificial interference with their natural feeding patterns. Yet this situation felt different. She was watching what might be the intersection of three species' destinies: hyenas following their evolutionary programming, a baby elephant fighting for survival, and a rogue bull whose motivations defied scientific explanation. The weight of decision pressed down on her like the desert heat. Should she trust in the brutal wisdom of natural selection, allowing whatever was meant to happen to unfold without human interference? Or should she recognize that sometimes the most natural thing was compassion itself, regardless of species boundaries? As she wrestled with this impossible choice, Temba reached the critical distance where his next move would determine everything. The desert held its breath as three species converged on a single point of destiny. Temba stood motionless at the edge of the confrontation, his ancient eyes taking in every detail of the scene before him. His massive ears flapped slowly, not in agitation, but in what appeared to be deep contemplation. This was the moment that would define not just the baby elephant's fate, but challenge everything science understood about animal consciousness. The hyenas had formed their killing circle, with Casey positioning herself for the final strike. Her powerful haunches coiled like springs as she prepared to launch the attack that would bring down their prey. The other clan members maintained their positions, ready to overwhelm the calf the moment their matriarch gave the signal. Their eyes glowed like amber coals in the darkness, reflecting millions of years of predatory evolution. The baby elephant, exhausted from its desperate struggle, swayed on unsteady legs. Its small trunk hung limp with defeat, and its trumpeting calls had faded to barely audible whimpers. This was nature's cruel mathematics playing out exactly as biology textbooks predicted. The weak would fall, the strong would survive, and sentiment had no place in the equation. But Temba remained frozen in that space between action and inaction, his massive head tilted as if listening to something beyond human hearing. In his weathered features, Nalani could see what looked like an internal war raging. Every instinct bred into him over millions of years of evolution demanded that he either leave or assert dominance over the dying calf. Yet something else, something indefinable, held him motionless. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Casey's muscles bunched for the killing leap. The baby elephant's legs began to buckle, and Temba's 7-ton frame stood poised between two choices that would either confirm or shatter everything researchers believed about the emotional lives of animals. In that crystalline moment, Nalani realized she was about to witness either the most predictable outcome in nature or something that would rewrite the very definition of compassion itself. What happened next defied every law of nature that Nalani had ever studied. Just as Casey launched herself toward the helpless calf, Temba did something that shattered 45 years of antisocial behavior in a single, earth-shaking moment. The massive bull didn't charge the hyenas as expected. Instead, he did something far more extraordinary. He positioned his enormous body directly over the baby elephant, creating a living fortress of flesh and bone. But the truly unthinkable part wasn't Temba's protective stance. It was what the hyenas did in response. Casey landed mere feet from the calf and immediately froze, her attack halted mid-strike. Instead of retreating or challenging the massive bull as any rational predator would do, she looked up at Temba and made a sound that Nalani had never heard in 12 years of hyena research, a low, almost respectful whine that seemed to acknowledge something beyond territorial boundaries. Then the impossible became surreal. One by one, the other hyenas began to back away from their prey, not in fear, but in what could only be described as deference. They formed a wide circle around Temba and the calf, maintaining their positions but making no further aggressive moves. It was as if some ancient protocol had been activated, some primordial understanding that transcended millions of years of predator-prey relationships. Temba lowered his massive head toward the trembling calf and gently touched its tiny back with his trunk, not the aggressive dominance display Nalani had witnessed countless times before, but a gesture of unmistakable protection and comfort. The baby elephant, sensing safety for the first time since its ordeal began, pressed its small body against Temba's leg. What followed was even more extraordinary. Casey approached slowly, her head lowered in submission, and lay down at a respectful distance. The other hyenas followed her lead, settling into resting positions around the unlikely pair. They weren't abandoning their hunt. They were choosing to honor something greater than their hunger. Nalani's hands shook as she realized she was documenting the most profound example of interspecies cooperation ever recorded, a moment that would force science to reconsider everything it believed about animal consciousness and moral behavior. What unfolded over the next hour challenged every assumption about animal intelligence and cooperation that Nalani had ever held. Temba didn't simply stand guard over the calf. He began orchestrating what could only be described as a cross-species rescue operation that defied biological logic. Using low-frequency rumbles that hyenas shouldn't have been able to understand, Temba began communicating with Casey's pack. The matriarch responded with a series of whoops and calls that seemed to convey information rather than aggression. Incredibly, other hyenas began moving in response to these exchanges, positioning themselves at strategic points around the watering hole. The purpose became clear when distant trumpeting announced the approach of the baby elephant's actual herd. They were searching frantically for their missing member, but their calls indicated they were moving in the wrong direction, away from the watering hole where their calf waited under Temba's protection. That's when the hyenas did something that rewrote everything scientists knew about their behavior. Instead of scattering to avoid the approaching elephant herd, they began a coordinated calling pattern, not their typical hunting cries, but specific vocalizations that seemed designed to carry across the desert landscape. Temba added his own deep, resonant calls to theirs, creating a symphony of interspecies communication that served as a beacon guiding the lost family toward their baby. The hyenas maintained their positions, essentially forming a living GPS system that stretched across nearly 2 miles of desert terrain. When the elephant matriarch finally appeared on the horizon, followed by 6 other adults, Nalani expected chaos. Elephant herds typically charged hyenas on sight, viewing them as threats to be eliminated. But something extraordinary happened instead. The lead female approached cautiously, her trunk extended to assess the unprecedented scene before her. She found her baby safe beneath the protection of a notorious rogue bull, surrounded by relaxed hyenas who showed no signs of aggression. The reunion that followed was unlike anything in wildlife documentation, a moment of pure gratitude that transcended species boundaries and suggested levels of animal emotional intelligence that science was only beginning to understand. The reunion between the baby elephant and its family became a moment that redefined everything Nalani understood about animal emotion and gratitude. The elephant matriarch approached Temba with a reverence that seemed almost ceremonial, her massive head bowing slightly in acknowledgement of what he had done. This wasn't the aggressive posturing typical of elephant encounters. It was recognition between equals who had transcended their species' normal behavioral patterns. The baby elephant, now safely surrounded by its family, did something that brought tears to Nalani's eyes. Before rejoining the herd, the calf approached each of the hyenas that had participated in its rescue. One by one, it gently touched them with its tiny trunk, not in fear or curiosity, but in what could only be interpreted as gratitude. Cassie, the fierce matriarch who had been moments away from killing this same calf, allowed the gentle contact with a patience that defied her predatory nature. The other hyenas remained motionless, accepting these unprecedented gestures with what appeared to be understanding of their significance. But the most profound moment came when the elephant matriarch approached Temba directly. The 2 giants stood face to face in the moonlit desert, their trunks intertwining briefly in what elephant researchers recognize as the highest form of respect and bonding. For a solitary bull who had been rejected by every herd for his antisocial behavior, this acceptance represented something far more valuable than mere acknowledgement. It was redemption. As the elephant family prepared to leave, something unprecedented occurred. Instead of immediately departing, they waited. The matriarch looked back at Kisi's pack and released a low, melodious rumble, a sound typically reserved for communication between elephant family members. The hyenas responded with their own calls, creating a brief but unmistakable exchange of mutual respect. When the elephants finally disappeared into the darkness, the hyenas didn't immediately disperse to hunt elsewhere. They remained at the watering hole for several more hours, almost as if processing what they had experienced. Temba stood alone, watching the path the family had taken, his posture somehow different, less isolated, more connected to the world around him. What Nalani witnessed in the Kalahari that night revealed something profound about the nature of compassion that extends far beyond the animal kingdom. The extraordinary cooperation between natural enemies demonstrated that empathy isn't just a human construct. It's a fundamental force that can emerge in the most unlikely circumstances when suffering calls out for relief. Temba's transformation from antisocial outcast to protector wasn't random. It represented the moment when individual pain recognized itself in another being's crisis. His years of isolation and rejection had given him an understanding of vulnerability that transcended species boundaries. When he saw the helpless calf surrounded by predators, he saw his own history of abandonment and chose to rewrite the ending. The hyenas' decision to abandon their hunt revealed something equally profound about moral choice. They weren't acting against their nature. They were accessing a deeper part of it, one that recognized the difference between survival and cruelty. In that moment, they chose cooperation over competition, demonstrating that even predators possess the capacity for mercy. This lesson resonates powerfully in our human world, where we often retreat into the safety of our own tribes during times of crisis. We tell ourselves that our responsibility ends where our similarity ends, that survival justifies selfishness. Yet the desert showed us something different, that our greatest strength emerges not when we protect those like us, but when we extend compassion to those who are different, vulnerable, or even traditionally considered enemies. Every day we encounter our own version of Temba's choice, the difficult colleague who needs support, the stranger from a different background facing hardship, the person whose beliefs challenge ours, but who requires basic human kindness. These moments test whether we'll be defined by our past hurts or by our capacity to prevent others from experiencing the same pain. When we choose to be protectors rather than predators, we discover that compassion isn't weakness. It's the highest form of strength, transforming both the giver and receiver in ways that ripple far beyond the moment itself.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.